All right, we're about to take a journey back to the 17th century. But this isn't your typical history lesson. We're actually going to step inside one person's mind to witness their deepest spiritual struggle and ultimately their path to a pretty remarkable discovery, all through their own words.
What we have here is this rare, really intimate window into the author's inner world. It's a first-person account, so we get to follow their story exactly as they told it, from a moment of incredible devotion, right through a crisis of faith, and finally to a powerful revelation.
So the author kicks things off with this very line, which is honestly the perfect hook for this whole story. It sets the central theme right away, this idea that selfless acts have real spiritual significance. And this concept of charity, it ends up being the key that unlocks the entire puzzle of their journey.
Our story starts at what you could call the absolute peak of the narrator's spiritual life. This was a time of intense, almost physical connection to their faith.
The narrator describes this moment of what they call divine sweetness. On Christmas Day, they felt as if they were, literally, taking the newborn infant from the crib, wrapping it in cloth, and placing it in their breast like a bouquet of myrrh. It's such a powerful metaphor for this all-consuming, deeply personal feeling of grace.
Okay, and here is where the central conflict of the story really begins. The first year, that experience is described as the greatest favor. But then, exactly 1 year later, on the very same day, nothing. The author admits they received this divine gift without the devotion they felt they should have, and that feeling, or lack thereof, sets the stage for the whole struggle.
And that moment of emptiness, well, it kicks off the second phase of this journey. That initial spiritual high is completely gone, and it's replaced by a period of spiritual dryness, confusion, and just deep, deep self-doubt.
This brings up a question that I think anyone can relate to, even today. What happens when that initial passion just fades? We might call it spiritual burnout or a crisis of faith now, but it's this deeply human experience of losing a connection that was once the center of your entire world.
So the narrator is just thrown into turmoil, desperately trying to understand this loss. Was it a punishment from God? Some kind of act of justice for a negligence they didn't even know they'd committed? Was it a chastisement? Or was it just revealing their own unworthiness all along? They wrestled with idle thoughts and felt like everything they did to get that feeling back was of no avail.
So just when everything seems hopeless, our narrator makes a conscious, deliberate choice. And this one decision becomes the absolute turning point of the entire story, a huge pivotal shift in their whole approach.
And here it is. This is the crucial shift. The author realized their old prayers were all focused inwardly, on themselves and the people related to me. So they made a conscious decision to change course and start praying for others, specifically for souls in purgatory or for anyone in affliction. It was a complete move from a personal focus to a selfless one.
Now, the text mentions a specific type of prayer called a collect. So what's that? Well, it's basically a short, formal prayer that has a really clear structure. And that detail is important because it shows the narrator wasn't just changing who they prayed for, they were also embracing a more structured, even communal way of praying.
And the result of this change? It was immediate. The author writes that it seemed to me that this change was very pleasing to thee, meaning to God. For the first time in a very long time, something felt right. This new selfless approach was actually working. And this change wasn't just a temporary fix either. It opened up a completely new path for them, a way to resolve their spiritual crisis and to move forward with a totally new understanding of their faith and really of themselves.
But there's still a problem, right? How could they ask for grace when they felt so completely unworthy? The solution they found was honestly brilliant. Instead of relying on their own merit, which they felt they'd lost, they decided to lean on a divine affirmation.
Their solution was to call on this incredibly powerful biblical passage. In essence, they were saying, I know I'm unworthy, but I'm asking for atonement through the merit of the blameless Son, the one you are well pleased with. It was a genius way of sidestepping their own perceived failures by appealing to a higher perfection.
This all builds into their final plea, which really follows a clear three-step path. First, they confess their negligence directly to God. Second, they humbly acknowledge that their own efforts have completely failed. And finally, they ask for atonement, not for their own sake, but through another. This is really the culmination of their entire journey.
So, what does this 17th century story tell us today? Well, first, that feeling of spiritual doubt, of being stuck, It's a timeless part of the human experience. Second, it suggests that when we're stuck, a really powerful solution can be to shift our focus away from our own problems and onto the needs of others. And finally, finding a new, outward-looking purpose can be the key to overcoming that feeling of being completely stalled out.
And that leaves us with a final question to think about. The narrator's journey seems to suggest that when our own strength and our inward focus fail us, maybe, just maybe, the most powerful solution is found by looking outside of ourselves.